Okay, so welcome to this catch-up. My name's Craig Waters, and we're just getting served beer, so that's pretty good going, isn't it?
Because this just arrived. It's V-Beers now.
V-Beers at vCatchup, yeah. We can't lose you. We're on to a winner. So I'm in Melbourne. I'm not a specific event or anything like that, but I heard on the grapevine that a gentleman was going to be in Melbourne for today only, and so I jumped at the chance and opportunity to interview you, Chad. So, if you'd like to, sure. I have a very special guest, and if you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be great. Yeah.
So my name's Chad Sakac. I guess my proudest title is I'm a V expert, right?
I'm actually wearing my V expert T-shirt today.
And I author a blog, Virtual Geek. And by the way, thanks to everybody who voted for me on the vSphereland.
Top 5, yeah, that's pretty good going.
I'm very happy, particularly with incredible bloggers like Frank and Duncan and Cormac, just coming on that list. So I'm the author behind virtualgeek.typepad.com. Those are the things that I think matter the most to the community. My official day job is I'm the SVP of Systems Engineers at EMC. So the roughly 4,000 SEs out there in the globe that work with our customers using EMC, VMware technologies, and in fact that's what I'm here in Melbourne doing, visiting the local team and a few customers.
Cool, excellent, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the vCatchup. I've got some questions. I've been trying to phrase similar questions to a bunch of people just to get a consensus of what their opinions are on certain things. So
no problem. Do you mind if I drink a beer?
Chad, you can do whatever you like. Yeah,
fantastic.
No problems at all.
It's not the middle of the day. Cheers.
Cheers, yeah. Thanks, mate. I think it's the first time we've cheersed on vCatchup, so that's good stuff.
That's excellent.
Nothing like a cold beer on a Friday afternoon.
And we have to perpetuate the ANZ myth, right? Of everybody's drinking beers constantly.
All the time.
All the time. And Canadians love maple syrup, and the Dutch are always wearing clogs.
That's a good analogy. I like it very much. What are the Aussies always doing then?
Yeah,
drinking beer.
Drinking beers, exactly.
Drinking beer. Okay. So look, a couple of questions. Yeah. First, I'll jump into the questions. So. You kind of answered it a little bit, but what brings you to Melbourne, Australia at this moment? Yeah, it's great to hear that you're in Melbourne for today.
Yep.
What brings you here? And I also wanted to ask you as well, just like how you compare Australia to other countries regarding like virtualization and storage. So double-barreled question now.
What brings me to Australia, first and foremost, are customers and the local team, and some of our partners. Visiting Telstra, ANZ Bank, it's a pretty long list of folks. Infoplex in Sydney yesterday. This is actually part of a little rotation, so my role is a global one. So basically, the year is divided up into 4 quarters.
Okay,
Each quarter has 3 months. Right. I spend 1 month a quarter in North America or the Americas, 1 month in EMEA, which is Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and then 1 month somewhere in Asia Pacific and Japan, and then rinse, lather.
We've got bombers going over them out. They're going to drop something. Yeah, but
that's exciting.
Lots of noise in the background there, but
wow! Seriously,
everything that can happen has happened. That's why we've got the isolated mics, though, so it should be pretty good still.
And then also to visit the local teams. So, we've got a great set of folks at EMC, at VMware, at our partners. Get to hear what they're doing and what's working, what's not. We're certainly not perfect by any means, so we can always get better. And that's actually one thing that is interesting about ANZ, so, Australia for the most part. It's very different than the rest of the globe. You asked that question, what's different?
Yeah.
So Australia has always been one of the, frankly, the fastest adopter of VMware technologies. It's basically Australia, the Netherlands. It's not a coincidence that you've got a ton of
VCDXs
and VMware experts in the Netherlands, and then the North America geo, right? Like that's the sequence. With Japan probably being the latest adopter of virtualization technologies. But the other thing that's unique about Australia is you guys are, and here comes the jet again for the second bombing run. You guys are actually the fastest adopters of public clouds and utility models.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is.
Public, you're talking about there, not private.
I'm talking about public clouds, but also utility models, meaning Meaning a lot of our big customers here in Australia don't buy storage from us by the, by the frame. They buy it on a utilization basis.
Okay, yeah.
They buy V blocks on utilization basis. So there's a unique thing that is. This is basically a much more OpEx country than the rest of the world.
Okay, yeah.
Literally more than anywhere. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the environment here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. That's good. We've had like a few people I've talked to before saying that it's kind of Australia's kind of a test bed for a lot of the stuff. Like when we had V Forum late last year. The idea was that they'd release a lot of new products there, and I was talking to a friend of yours, Scott Drummond's, a while back, and he was saying that
V Pivot is his blog. It's a great blog.
Very good blog, and he was saying basically what happens is a new Flare Code version comes out, and you tend to find it's like Australia that are already running it in production sort of thing.
So fast adoption of technology in general. Scott's a great example of EMCSE and a great blogger too. So there's something actually pretty unique about the culture, the country, I think as a Canadian we share something, which is we have countries that are geographically enormous with dense population centers surrounded by nothingness.
Yeah, lots of desert in Australia anyway. I guess for you it's more Arctic level, isn't it?
Well, and the other thing that comes from that is that the local telcos, while everyone always gets frustrated with their local telco,
long distance,
they're typically relatively advanced compared with their global peers. So Telstra and Bell Canada are actually, relative to their global peers, very advanced telcos.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. You're full of facts, mate. I'm so happy that you're here today. Yeah, thanks very much for.
It's
my
pleasure. With each swig, there will be more facts.
I can't wait. Yeah, and other things too. Eh? Okay, so the next question I wanted to ask you was just about. Obviously, I'm the Melbourne VMUG leader.
Yeah.
What do you do to support your local VMUG, and what kind of commitments do you have in store for the community in general in 2013? Yeah.
So.
And I use that word commitment. It's a big word and it means a lot.
I got it, Craig, and I'm all in. So, we're a huge supporter of VMUGs. I'm personally a big believer in the community that kind of powers VMware as a frankly hopefully a contributing member. The community behind VMware has always been one of the dynamics that always made me attracted to virtualization and VMware to begin with. And as such, we sponsor a lot of VMUGs. I attend them, the big ones, the small ones.
Do you do any local VMUGs or in Toronto?
I've done the VMUGs here in Sydney. I missed the last one.
So that's V Forum that you're talking about. You actually been to a VMUG
meeting? I've been to the VMUG as well.
Excellent, good stuff, mate. Yeah.
And of course the big events, the V Forums. Literally, and the smallest of the small. I mean, literally, I was in Chicago one day, and the Manitoba VMUG. Manitoba, for those of you that don't know it, is a province in the middle of nowhere. No offense to all the Manitobans that might be watching in Canada, and their VMUG is 40, 50 people, right? So speak, sponsor, support, and my own personal effort whenever EMC is the sponsor behind a VMUG is to make it not a vendor commercial. The thing I like the most about the VMUGs is that they're users groups, which means, while they need sponsorship to operate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's like a non-profit organization almost. Yeah.
It always works best, and the feedback is always the best when, we talk about what customers are doing that's working, what they're doing that's not working, what we see technology roadmaps taking us towards. The strategic, the tactical, and not make it a vendor commercial. Everybody...
I often say to sponsors that come and often say, consider the audience to have already purchased your product, and what you're doing is you're opening the bonnet up and showing them the capabilities of what it can do and what you've got. So it's not that initial sell, it's the more I'm using these tools, what can I do with it, what can I get out of it sort of thing.
And we're in a relatively good position. A lot of customers, thank you customers, choose EMC with VMware, which is great. While EMC is obviously a leader in the space, one thing that's interesting is in the VMware context, we actually have more share proportional than we do in general purpose. So I don't know. I find that for me personally, in the VMUG context, it's not a time to discuss EMC per se.
Yeah,
best practices, do's, don'ts, multi-vendor best practices.
So more about the integration, you mean? Is that what you're...
Yes, but there's a lot of stuff that applies regardless of vendor. So like, for example, Jason Bakke, who's another great blogger out there, he had a recent blog post around the myth of VAI, atomic test and set, and the infinite data store. In other words, one of the classic debates, whether it's on VMFS or on NFS, is how many VMs should you have per data store? What's the sweet spot? What's the formula? And there's best practices, do's and don'ts. Vaughn Stewart, from NetApp, and I have done a bunch of joint sessions around stretch clustering and SRM, and when you do one versus the other. I don't know. I find that the multi-vendor stuff is the best for VMworlds and for VMUGs because people don't come to those to hear a vendor talk about what they do or don't do and why they're the shizit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Really good point. Yeah. Okay. So the next question was really around. I hate to use the word predictions, but what do you? The previous vCatchups I did last year was all about looking backwards and looking at VMworld that year and what happened and what. Really, with these ones, I'm trying to focus on what's coming and what's coming towards. But obviously, there's a sweet spot between what you can say and what's like, what you're allowed to say, sort of thing. So
I can get myself into severe trouble.
I'm sure we all can, yeah.
But I've been trained and certified to walk this
walk this line. Cool. So, like, the question really is that what do you think 2013 has in store from a tech perspective, and what would you like to see, any predictions and that sort of thing, what would you like to see happen?
So it's a very good question. No one has a crystal ball, certainly not me. I can tell you what I believe. So in my experience, in my travels, I see a whackload of OpenStack now coming up within service providers and in academia. And I'm seeing more and more of that, which is good for the industry as a whole. I still don't see OpenStack very often in the enterprise. The enterprise continues to be dominated by VMware and virtualization as a whole. I still surprisingly see almost no Hyper-V.
Okay.
Right? Which is a bit weird.
Yeah. Well, the publicity would have you feel something different, though, wouldn't it? But
the places where I see it is usually where the customer has had some experience that makes them angry at VMware for some reason or another.
Yeah, right.
Rather than,
that's interesting.
So it's the exception rather than the rule. So I don't expect to see huge share changes in the marketplace. What I do expect from a technology standpoint is it's going to be the year of the software-defined data center. I think it's going to light up all of the buzzword bingo.
Yeah, I need a little flashing light, because the
bingo,
SDDC, there you go, yeah.
But it's not just marketing. Obviously, Nasir was acquired for a huge sum.
We'll get to that one. Yeah,
you don't do that lightly. To bring out Uncle Joe Tucci's pocketbook to the tune of $1.1 billion is a pretty big check. Particularly for a company that had a relatively small amount of revenue and product, which, and without getting into the details that would get me in trouble, EMC and VMware were not the only party that was interested in this era.
Sure.
The other thing is that you can expect to see lots and lots of stuff about software-defined storage models, both from VMware and from everybody in the industry.
Yeah, there's been a big shift in there. I wanted to come to that too. So, what else do you see? What's your...
One of the things that I knew about in advance, and now it's public, is that VMware would be entering into the market with their own hybrid cloud service.
That's right.
That's a pretty big bit of news, and represents the fact that the world's moving very fast here. Again, VMware, certainly in EMC, have got a view that says we want to partner with service providers. I'm visiting with Telstra while I'm here. Huge partner, but at the same time, we've got to move very quickly together with our partners and create some good innovation in that space. So more and more customers are starting to use hybrid models as well as trying to build cloud within their enterprise. You can expect, without giving any details, that a lot of stuff that Pat Gelsinger has talked about in recent times, will land into a future vSphere release.
Yeah, we've had that a few times already. Yeah, I was talking to Stephen Foskett in the last vExpert, and he was laying down the prediction that there'll be a new vSphere release this year. Sorry, so yeah,
and
that'll be interesting.
And a lot of that stuff will be associated with that. One other thing that is interesting is we're seeing more and more customers playing with Hadoop. So VMware's entered into that with Project Serengeti, which is a neat way to play with Hadoop in a virtualized context. Paul Moritz is now clearly working on the Pivotal Initiative. And a ton of VMware and EMC assets have landed there. Pat Gelsinger actually stole my joke. I was talking with Paul. I hate to name drop, it sounds annoying, but literally we were at an EMC office right before the Pivotal decision was made by the board, and I was saying, congratulations, Paul, you've got all the cool toys. So he's got Greenplum and Greenplum Hadoop, Gemfire and SQLfire, Cloud Foundry, which is super cool. All of those things reflect something that's going on in the industry as a whole, which is a move towards net new applications that use big data and analytics. And then the last thing, I actually predicted this on my blog back in the beginning of the year. In fact, in December of last year, I said, hey, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff going on the security front. And, again, I had a lot of visibility into what was going on with the RSA breach that occurred.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah,
but now it's very widely known that there are nation-state actors that are persistently attacking.
We've seen a lot of evidence in the last few weeks, haven't we?
And so it's not just nation-states too, it's all sorts of organized crime. So the nature of cyber security, some people are going so far as saying cyber warfare is changing big time. This is, and I expect in the IT landscape that's going to be something that touches everything. I made one other prediction I'll put on the record. I think that, Apple is going to continue to stumble a little bit before it gets itself straightened out. I don't know about you, but every time I do the iOS X updates on my phone, it's slightly not as good,
Well, I saw that Samsung released the Galaxy S4.
Yeah.
So that looks pretty.
It's
amazing.
pretty cool, right? So they'll Apple's got enough cash to.
They've got a lot of cash.
They can do whatever they want, right?
They do,
And they've got lots of users that are fanatical, including me. They'll get it right, but they're going to continue to stumble for a little bit.
Yep.
The one company that I'm making the more risky prediction that I think will stumble will be Oracle. And the reason I say that is, as I travel the globe and I talk to customers all over the place, sometimes they're frustrated with their vendors, partners. Sometimes they're frustrated with EMC. Again, I'm not saying we're perfect. Sometimes VMware, whatever. But I've never encountered a customer that has anything except for anger and hatred with Oracle, even if they're a huge customer. And I don't know. For me, I've never viewed that as a sustainable state. You know what I mean? There's tons of choices for customers at the database and at the app.
What about community chat, isn't it? That's what we've got to really say with that.
It's
Oracle, what about
your community? Seriously. your users have to, on the whole, like you or love you.
Yeah, there has to be a passion there, doesn't there? Definitely,
So, good luck, Larry. I mean, he's clearly doing something right. He has a boat that I only dream of having.
I think he's got several, actually, but
Yes, he's the James Bond villain of IT, in a sense. He has an island. He has an island of his own.
The evil Dr. Larry, Cool, that's great. Really good, jump on to the next question.
Sure.
Software-defined networking, right? And we all know it's going to be big. It's really tacked into the software-defined data center, the Nicira acquisition. Now, VMware, I think they actually released the NSX.
They didn't release it. They announced it.
Yeah, they've announced it. Sorry, my apologies. So, really, I was saying the question was really around that they have formed the dream team. They've got people like Brad Headland, Scott Lowe in there. You know, like, you know, if you were ever going to do something, they were the kind of guys that you'd get in there and you know, put something together with. So how do you think it's going to change the virtualization industry? And more importantly, how do you think it's going to impact storage as well? Because obviously this whole software-defined piece is going to have there's big implications. There's a lot of companies that are out there now who are, you know, who are selling products around a software-defined model. You know, I suppose it's a bit like cloud, isn't it, where it comes along and then you rebadge what you've got based upon it. But there are some players in there that actually do have some, you know, realistic
capability and product. So
there's about 20 questions there, brother.
Yeah, no,
good
no.
Luck, mate.
Sorry,
good luck, mate. Yeah.
First things first, I'm super happy to see Brad there. I'm super happy to see Scott there. Scott had choices. You know, he was part of EMC and, in fact, part of my team. And, you know, he said, hey, listen, I feel like this software-defined networking space is moving pretty fast. So collaborate with Martine over at VMware, and, you know, I want that to be the dream team, and they've got a dream team. They've got an incredible product and capability in Nicira. Nicira is shipping capabilities today, but they've got a pretty heavy dependence on the open vSwitch. You know, that's really KVM centric. The NSX announcement is really about saying that in the future there will be native support for Nicira's stack built into the distributed vSwitch in VMware.
Yeah, there was talk about the VCNS, which is the vShield replacement product.
Bringing those products more together. And then obviously using the distributed controller architecture of Nicira to create overlay networks. Now, the reason that that's important is that basically when people do cloud deployments at enterprise or at service provider scale, they need to be able to create completely logical networks very quickly and do it programmatically, right? And while you could do some of that stuff with VCD, the vShield approach wasn't perfect by any means, and the Nicira's approach is far, far better. When you bring those things together, you know, makes it simple and easy to create logical networks that are completely virtual instances of full-blown networks with their own topologies on top of a physical network. Now, the thing that people often get wrong, and this is a very important distinction in my view, is does that mean that what is done in hardware is now done in software? Right?
It's a good point.
And
it's a good question.
The thing that's very, very important to understand is in the land of networking, have networks been virtualized for a long time?
VLANs,
right? VLANs basically would virtualize what in the networking land you might call the data plane. The decision of logical separation, but for the data flow of packets themselves. Right? So as an Ethernet frame or an IP packet comes into a switch or a router, let's use the switch example for now. An Ethernet frame comes in and it needs to look at a MAC address table and then basically make a switching decision within a few nanoseconds to go out another port or a virtual port in the case of a VLAN. That can't be done today in software.
You need dedicated ASICs to do that kind of.
And it's not that it couldn't in some future point be done there, but literally if you look at how long it takes to have something come into a NIC, go across a PCIe bus, go into memory and a CPU, do a compare, which is a few little register swaps, and then go out across the PCIe bus and then back out a port. That adds up to, call it 10, 20, 30 nanoseconds, which in the realm of human existence is pretty short. But in networking, in switching, those are very long time frames, right? Which means, okay, by definition, switching is going to stay in hardware, either ASICs or in what's called merchant silicon, for some time to come, right? Now, the question is, so then what is Nicira doing in software? They're doing the things that occur in timescales that are in milliseconds or in tens of seconds or even minutes, which are routing. How does the routing work? How do they make a routing decision? How do they make a switching decision?
Yeah, the intelligence, the control, like you're saying, yeah.
And those things happen on different timescales, which means you can do them in software and you can do it in the edges. Okay. Now, Nasir's approach isn't the only approach. There's approaches from Big Switch, right? And other OpenFlow and SDN startups. I predict that this will be the year where Insieme, Cisco's secret but not so secret spin out crack team of Sony, Prem, Luca, and Mario will come out with some new whiz-bang thing. But the other thing is that you can expect to see the same impact in storage land. Now, what's important to realize is that in storage land, there's this data plane and the control plane. The control plane in storage land is how do you provision a file system, how do you provision a line, how do you make a decision, what's a policy action, right? Things that VASA does, as an example, in VMware land today, and storage arrays communicate with VASA. There needs to be an open flow for storage. And everybody, by the way, who is a SDS startup or company, none of them are doing this virtualization of a control plane. Right? What they're all doing is they're saying, I will deliver my storage product as a software product, bring your own hardware. EMC does it, NetApp does it, startups do it, Nexenta does it, you could argue Nutanix does it, SimpliVity does it, right? Everybody does it in some form or variant. The reality of it is that storage stacks, unlike networking, could, in some cases, be done in software.
Because you're talking milliseconds.
Because you're talking milliseconds or hundreds of microseconds, which means it could be done in a software stack. And frankly, if you take a look at almost all the array vendors today, whether you buy their stuff as hardware and software combos, it's running on commodity hardware as we speak.
Nice. x86 oriented,
so
isn't it?
you'll see that. I can guarantee this. EMC World is in May. Be there or be square. There will be lots of stuff around software-defined storage. I guarantee that there will be major stuff in future vSphere releases. And VMware's talked about it, right? vSAN, vFlash, where VMware will increasingly offer some native storage capabilities, which is going to be cool and fun and exciting times.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Fun and exciting times.
That's good. Good stuff, yeah. Have we got time for?
We got time.
How long have we got?
So you're going to be at the airport until, so I'm going to grab my car because my parking's run out.
Okay, perfect. You get your car.
I'll get a car, and if I pull up here...
Yeah, that's great, yeah. That's good, yeah.
Perfect. Over there. All right.
Live
let's
and
keep
direct,
going.
So look, really interesting stuff about your view of software networking, and I think it's really interesting to hear about the storage aspects of that and what's happening right now and what should be going on, particularly around the control plane stuff. But now I remember you did a blog a while back about your home lab, but I know I don't have to ask this question. I've been asking people, do you get your hands on the tools? And I know you do, right? But so instead of asking like, oh, do you have a home lab and all that, because we all know you do, can you tell us more about what you do with your home lab?
Yeah, you
so
bet.
What do you use it for?
So my greatest nightmare, as a geek, a proud geek, is that as I continue grow and climb in my career, that I slowly become a talking head, a bureaucrat, and worst of all, a politician. At that point, So for me, it's a very important thing to get back to my Zen state and my ground state, which is to play with the technology, play with the lab. Obviously, I have good early access to VMware technologies, which is great and handy, but I also have access to everything that EMC manufactures, from vMaxes to vPlex to VNX to Isilon, all as virtual machines, so I can play and learn. But the other thing is that I use it to explore technologies that are new and a little bit orthogonal. For example, the refresh that I did at Christmas time was so I could play with Serengeti and Hadoop. Because I wanted to learn something new.
And obviously the world's changed as far as things, everything's virtual appliance orientated these days, so you're not having to go down to the bare bones of configuring a lot of this stuff. It's pretty much, copy your virtual appliance in there, give it a DHCP address, and bang, you're away. You can get into that. So are you spending a lot of time in your lab putting stuff together, or are you actually spending the time actually doing the looking at the technology.
About once a year, I do a full-blown refresh of the hardware. And the reason I like that is it makes me chill out to pull out a screwdriver and actually do my own system builds.
Yeah, cool.
And the other thing is that, frankly, you can do a lot for pretty cheap. And every year, that moves pretty fast. Like, for example, in the latest build, I used a lot of SSDs. And SSDs used to be like, esoteric and strange. Now I could basically deploy a storage device with 4 SSDs for a couple grand, and literally it's a rocket, right? But I also find that it literally makes me chill out. Some people buy fast cars. Some people travel around the globe. I drive a Honda Odyssey. I travel around the globe for my job. So what I do with what EMC thankfully pays me is I get to play in my lab.
Yeah, cool. That's great, mate. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's great. That's really good, yeah. Yeah, cool. Okay, so look, I'll find it. Well, the last question is usually about a topic of my interviewee's choice, but I know we talked about briefly around you've recently announced a lot of stuff around Flash for EMC, and do you want to talk about that and about the acquisition of the
Stream.io?
That kind of stuff.
So it's an interesting factoid about EMC. We basically invest 14% of our earnings, about $2 billion a year, into organic innovation, inventing new things internally. But we spend about the same amount every year inorganically to acquire new technologies, to be a venture funder. We do a fair amount of venture funding ourselves. And in this space, while we live in the era where the sweet spot in the array market are arrays that use a little bit of flash with a lot of magnetic media, just based on economics, capacity, and those sorts of things. There's no question that a little bit of flash in a server can go a long way for certain workloads. And basically Fusion.io has led the market there for a long time.
They've done an amazing thing, really, haven't they? So,
EMC has now entered that market with our second gen product, Extreme SF, which is a server flash card. And in a nutshell, it can operate as DAS or as a cache, and its sweet spot is roughly about 30% better performance than brand F. While having a 20% lower cost.
I saw the car race, the two cars.
Did you like that?
I thought it was pretty
creative.
Good. Yeah. It's pretty good. Yeah.
But the other portion of the market is one where there's also a ton of disruption. Are all flash array startups. So Pure, Violin.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. We had like the Melbourne VMware. We had an all-day user conference recently, and half the sponsors were storage, flash-based startups. So there's a lot out there.
If you're a startup, basically the hot startup spaces are Hadoop startups, flash array startups, and SDN startups. Right? So all of these topics. The social media startups have kind of tailed off a little. But basically, we invested actually a lot of VC activity into a whole range of people in startup land. And in our view, Extreme.io was really the pick of the litter. They were the only ones who had built their array from the ground up for a scale-out design. The usual things that you see from all-flash arrays: blazing fast performance, sub 500 microsecond response times. But the other thing that's very cool is that they can do an inline dedupe, not as a post-process, but literally in real time.
As you write there.
Right? And that has huge effects for economics, for scale, and it can do it all, like literally, you can't even turn it off. Right? Like it's in essence a free function based on how it works. I did a blog post on Virtual Geek, so if you do a Virtual Geek search Google Virtual Geek, Extreme SF or Extreme.io, you'll see that blog post that explains how it works. But it's very cool. It's now it's got what's called directed availability, which means it's being manufactured by EMC, going out the door. Customers are now buying it, using it, which is great. It's really, really cool stuff. And the sweet spot is for View use cases, Zen desktop use cases.
It's always been the challenge on it, the IOPS required.
And since you can now do an inline dedupe, the usual debate of is it persistent, is it non-persistent is now kind of a moot point. It's awesome. Awesome stuff. So again, our view as EMC is that Flash is going to disrupt storage on the server in hybrid arrays, so tiering, caching using solid state, and in all flash arrays. Generally, everybody else in the market kind of says it's going to be one or the other, and it just so happens to coincide with the one thing that they happen to do.
Yeah, cool. That's great, Chad. Yeah.
Cool.
That's great. I know you've got to go, so thank you very much, mate. I really
Craig,
appreciate you
thank
coming on today.
It's my pleasure.
See you again soon, yeah?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much, yeah.